Lace up those boots, ring that bell, and step into the ring. Welcome to Watch Mojo's Top 5 Myths, the series that finds the biggest myths that people actually believe and dispels them one by one. In today's installment, we're looking at 5 myths about pro wrestling that had us breaking kayfabe.
I'm not from here! I have my own customs! Look at my crazy passport!
We won't be tackling tall tales and storyline myths like how many people have body slammed Andre the Giant or Roman Reigns coming from planet stale bread. Instead, we're looking specifically at common misconceptions and stigmas regular folk have towards good old wrestling.
This isn't wrestling! This isn't wrestling!
Myth number 5, the ring has some spring to its step.
Hansa got out of the way somehow! Oh no!
Contrary to what some out there might believe, taking a bump on a wrestling ring isn't really that fun. Yes, a wrestling ring moves a little bit when impact is felt, but it's most definitely not designed to contain as much spring as, say, a trampoline. The surface of most wrestling rings is hardwood, with a very thin layer of foam padding and canvas. A modest amount of the physical shock is absorbed by a traditional wrestling ring, but the idea that pro wrestlers would be able to perform the way they do while walking on such a cushioned surface really doesn't make much sense. Going head to head against an opponent on a traditional squared circle found in most pro wrestling organizations could more or less be compared to utilizing the floor most gymnasts use to compete. It won't feel great, but it sure as heck beats being dropped on unforgiving concrete. Now if only we could bust the myth of who leaves all the weapons under there.
Oh, look out of nowhere! Jimmy King with a foreign object to the head of DDP!
Myth number 4, steroid abuse is rampant amongst most pro wrestlers.
Say f*** you!
Sorry dude, steroids.
The roots of this myth likely stem from a public and very controversial steroid trial for WWE owner and chairman Vince McMahon back in 1994. A lack of sustainable evidence eventually led to charges of steroid trafficking being dropped against McMahon during the trial, with the WWE, then WWF, essentially dodging what could have been a fatal bullet to the company. Steroid use within major companies would quite simply be impossible in this day and age, with wrestlers having constant drug tests in which even the biggest stars are penalized if any trace of illegal substance such as fat burners, roids, or marijuana is found within them. And although we still see the typical big man wrestlers in the scene, the industry, thanks to the internet wrestling fans, has shifted to focus towards leaner, more athletic talents such as CrossFit Jesus himself, Seth Rollins.
Seth Rollins' second roll!
Myth number 3, everything is rehearsed in advance and nothing ever goes wrong.
Come, I want to get you in rehearsals right away!
The physical ballet of storytelling which goes into pro wrestling matches can be very different, depending on which wrestlers happen to be in the ring. A classic match such as Ricky the Dragon Steamboat vs Macho Man Randy Savage from 1987's WrestleMania 3 was apparently planned in advance, right down to the smallest detail. A modern superstar such as John Cena, however, has been known to call spots and sequences with his opponent right there in the ring. The winner of the match, and spots, meaning a pre-planned maneuver or event, are usually the only things a wrestler may walk into the ring with in mind. The rest is usually routine, as most superstars wrestle around 4 matches per week. And with the rise of talents from Japan and Mexico entering the American big leagues, it'd be hard to plan everything out, given the whole not speaking English thing. As you'd expect, this means a lot of mistakes or botches are made along the way, and as such a degree of improvisation needs to be employed, lest ye be featured in Botchamania. Myth number 2, it's all fake blood.
Is this fake blood? Yes, it is.
Put down the razor flare. If you've followed professional wrestling for a long enough period of time, then you'll likely remember a period from when many of the main event matches were complete bloodbaths, with opponents literally bleeding for their art right there on the canvas. Sure, some parents may have tried to console their children with the line that all the red stuff is staged material. The truth is that the blood was very real, and usually self-inflicted by the wrestlers in a process called blading. This is when the performers either hide a razor blade in the ring gear, or are given one from an outside source such as a referee, and cut themselves in order to sell the opponent's offense to the crowd. This practice was commonplace both within the localized territory systems of the 70s and 80s wrestling, as well as on major television networks during the Monday Night Wars era of Vince McMahon's WWF versus Ted Turner's WCW. Blading has been eliminated in today's more commercially friendly WWE programming, but maybe Brock Lesnar didn't get that memo. Myth number 1, wrestling is fake and no one ever gets hurt.
Man, I thought Ultimate Robot fighting was real, like pro wrestling. but it turns out it's fixed, like boxing.
Wrestling fans have likely heard this one all their lives, and that's because this is probably one of the most synonymous myths surrounding the whole industry. A better word to use is predetermined or scripted, however, because there are actually a wealth of risks involved for pro wrestlers. It's true that these are trained athletes who know how to successfully negate lots of impact when they fall, and collaborate in the ring in order to pull off fabulous choreographed performances.
Whomever comes out on top should have the advantage. Top rope Frankensteiner, leg hooked. Oh!
It's also true that tons of injuries, some of them serious, tragically occur every year in matches around the world. Add to this the severity of wrestling's famous chops, and the fact that Japanese pro wrestling is known around the world for its strong style of high-impact stiff punches and kicks, and you have one very physical industry.
Shibata! PK!
You can't fake gravity, and no amount of practice is gonna teach you how to land on your head. The truth is, a lot of bumps taken in wrestling hurt. Young wrestlers these days often want to make an impact, and as such they opt for taking dangerous risks in order to get noticed, many times quite grotesquely. But hey, it's all part of the job.
I'm gonna probe ya, 'cause I'm the intern.
So how many of these myths did you believe?
Hell's this?
For more brain-busting top 5s and stone-cold top 10s, please subscribe to WatchMojo.com.
The aggressor takes a waistlock, gets behind his opponent, going for the kill shot. Oh!